The game I'm going to talk about today is Lost in Vivo. Now, I was originally going to make my video on this game part of my finishing my Steam backlog series, but I finished the game yesterday and thought to myself that I can't cover this whole game and all of the Steam in that kind of video. So I thought to myself, maybe I can do an analysis video on the game and talk about its many themes and symbolisms. So from now on, every once in a while, I'll make a video similar to this. And if this isn't good, or the people watching don't like it, then I just won't do it anymore. So let's get started. Also, there are going to be a ton of spoilers, so if you like scary games, go get Lost in Vivo. Also, the themes in this game are pretty dark, so double warning ahead. One more thing, these are my opinions and I'd like you to please be respectful. If you disagree, leave a dislike. Lost in Vivo is an indie horror game which isn't jump scares and spooky women. It's a fever dream and psychological torment. It's every monster, every noise that tingles the hair on my back. Symbolism in this game actually makes you think. So if I was to review this game, panic attack out of death. At the start of the game, you go to a therapist because of some kind of trauma. She tells you she wants to start Vivo exposure therapy. Vivo exposure therapy, according to the American Psychological Association, Vivo exposure is a type of exposure therapy generally used for treating individuals with phobias, obsessive compulsive disorders, and any other anxiety disorders, in which the client directly experiences anxiety-provoking situations or stimuli in a real-world condition. For example, a client who fears flying could be accompanied by a therapist to the airport to simulate boarding a plane while practicing anxiety-decreasing techniques, such as deep breathing. Compare imaginal exposure. The player doesn't say anything back, so we can guess that this hasn't started yet, but it will, hehe. In the meantime, the therapist assigns her a therapy dog, which is a corgi named Danny. So the main objective of the game is to get your dog back, which unfortunately you lost because he went down a sewer drain while you were walking him. How he went down was of being flooded. In Vivo exposure therapy, there are two methods: flooding and systematic desensitization. Flooding is when a patient immediately faces their fears, and system desensitization is when they gradually do it. I think that the therapist intended systematic desensitization, but after the dog was flooded, that was on the nose, isn't it? The main character had to immediately face a danger and fear. As you go down the sewers, you encounter your first set of spook. A homeless man comes behind you and attacks you. This, I don't think, symbolizes anything, except that the homeless man is incredibly ugly and aggressive, which I'll come back to later. Another feature is you get to whistle to your dog. Each time you do this, you expect for your dog to bark at you, which most of the time it does. I'll come back to that later too. Now as you continue, you'll find a few spooky notes and some spooky imagery. Stuff doesn't really get psychological till the subway. At the end of the sewers, you see a tunnel, but there is something off. Around the tunnel, there are candles, and to mention that the tunnel is completely rusty. Rust has a texture that embodies abandonment. Rust on metal is when metal reacts with water and oxygen, and if kept like this, more and more rust will come on. Now, I'm probably reaching, but hear me out. When it used to rain where I live, my mom would always tell me to put the bike away if she thought it was going to rain, and most of the time I did it. But when I didn't, it got rusty. And it wasn't forgetfulness, it was abandonment. The bike was getting too small for me, and I didn't really care. Like how this tunnel was still being used, there wouldn't be rust, but now there is. The people who made the tunnel abandoned it. As you go down the tunnel, you see horrific monsters locked behind cages. This ties to the theme of abandonment, because if they're locked behind cages, someone must have put them there. They're also incredibly ugly and disgusting, and like the homeless man, we'll come back to this. As you finally walk out of the tunnel, you see something in the shape of your dog, tricking you into believing that your suffering is over and you can get your dog and leave. Now, for clarity's sakes, I'm going to tell you more about the main character so that I can stop saying, I'll come back to this. Our main character, the person we play as, has serious mental problems. That is why she goes to a therapist and has a therapy animal. Now, I won't reveal too much now, but I'll speed up the process so this video isn't 40 minutes long. After encountering your dog, the game freezes and you find yourself in a room with the statue of a goddess and a floating orb. If you interact with the orb, then the game saves. This room is supposed to be a metaphor of safety and faith. When saving the game, it'll put you back to full health. And if you die, you can go back to that room. And if you look at the goddess statue, you can see that she is less menacing or not ugly than the other creatures. As you leave yourself back into the sewers, soon enough you find a doorway that leads you up some sort of subway system, if you can call it that. As you enter another door, you enter a bigger room with seats and a way to get to the actual subway cars. All around you, you can see posters about weight loss and how bulimia is the answer. For those who don't know, bulimia, according to everydayhealth.com, bulimia is a serious eating disorder that involves both binging and purging. Binging means you eat a large amount of food in a short period of time. Purging is an unhealthy way to rid your body of those extra calories. People with bulimia sometimes make themselves vomit to eliminate the calories they consume. Bulimia is seriously unhealthy. If you have a friend or family who does this, tell them to stop. If you've ever seen weight loss ads, then you know how it makes you feel. Weight loss ads are supposed to make you feel like you're inferior, not as good as the people around you who seem like they are healthy and thin. I think that the main character is having problems with her weight and wants to lose it. I also think that these ads are not actually there and a figment of her imagination. Why I think this is because there are no ads except the ones about losing weight. This is one of her psychological problems that I talked about before. If you move past the room and go down the stairs, you can see a train. You'll also hear barking. You can peer inside one of the windows of the train and see a figure and your dog together. As the train rides, you can see the figure looking at you. After the train leaves, you're completely alone. If you try to whistle, your dog doesn't bark back. This is a form of abandonment. Of course, it wasn't your dog's choice to leave you behind with the strange man, but they still left you. This is like the rush from the sewer tunnel. This feeling of abandonment. After that, you get a train from calling it from a computer. As the train comes, you go inside uncaring who is driving it. The way you call the train is by pressing a button. You don't even pick a location. As you get on the train, you feel like you're not the one in control. Just how the main character is not in control of her life. Oh yeah, you're a girl, I forgot to mention. These mental problems control your life. For example, you start seeing things like weight loss ads, and more importantly, the weird creepy monsters and creatures. Another way you can tell that you're not in control is that you can hear your own death on the tracks. After getting on the train, you can hear a scream, then what I can only describe as meat hitting something, then a screeching sound. The train controls you. It controls where you're going, where and when you're going to die, and most importantly, if you're getting your dog back. And going back to the death part, if you ever thought about mortality or death itself, then you know that these thoughts can last a long time. Through all her mental problems, maybe she ever thought about death or taking her own life, and these thoughts reflect off the game. When she heard herself die in the track, she remembered that she was going to die someday. After some time, you can get off the train. To unlock the next area, you need to flip a couple switches, with the last one being important. It's located in a hallway that is unlike the subway, and there you meet the Ghost Girl. The Ghost Girl is an enemy that comes out of nowhere. It looks like a mix between a fetus with its large head and a person with old age because of its skin and her sags on her face and body. And if you successfully kill it, it turns into a corpse in a bag. Now let's analyze this enemy piece by piece. First, its appearance. Like I said, it looks like a mix between a fetus and an old woman. This can symbolize change between age. It can also symbolize life itself, and how you start as a child and become an old person. But there is one more stage, death. When you kill the creature, it turns into a corpse in a bag. This symbolizes death, just like the train killing you. So in short, this monster is made perfectly for the main character. Another justification why I think that it's all inside her head. Also, by walking around, you get a shotgun, and if you continue that path, you can go inside some bathrooms. In these bathrooms, you find notes. These notes are poetry made by someone who's experiencing relationship problems with her boyfriend, who verbally abuses her by calling her ugly and fat. This ties back to almost everything. Why I pointed out the enemies and the creatures in the game were all ugly is because there is a manifestation of what I think is the person who is writing these notes. And I think that the person writing these notes is the main character herself. The reason why she sees so many ads about weight loss is because she's getting verbally abused about her weight. Why every enemy is ugly and weird looking is because she is projecting her self-image onto the creatures. In another note, you can find out that she is having a child with them. You can also find in the woman's bathroom a changing table covered in blood, which I think is related to the child she is having with her abusive boyfriend. So after that, another train comes. This time, the train seems rusty, another sign of abandonment similar to the tunnel. On the train, there is a note. This one is also about the relationship between the main character and her boyfriend, but it also foreshadows the new enemy. This one talks about how most of the time it's the main character and not the boyfriend pressuring to lose weight. She says that she is worried that she isn't good enough for him and that she is scared of being abandoned. More symbolism. The note also says how she looks in the mirror a lot and nothing ever changes. Also, something I forgot to mention is that the subway is called the Royal Phantom Subway. Kinda on the nose, don't you think? But also shows that she overcame her fear of death in old age, as we don't see this being or any of the symbolism mentioned anywhere else. When on the train, at a certain point in the game, will freeze and you will be transported off of the train. As you walk along the tracks, you can see an entrance with the name area on top of it. Grand Bulim Avenue. Bulim, short for bulimia. This is another place that is made up and only exists in the minds of the main character. After seeing all the weight loss ads and saw notes about losing weight for someone, it would just make sense that this is all in her mind. As you walk in, soft, pleasant music makes you think that you're safe, that this is a safe haven for you. There's even a save station. I'll come back to this in a bit. After saving, you can go through a door that leads you to a big open area. You can try exploring, but there are really only entrances. One that has a puzzle you can't solve yet, and the other an empty room with nothing than a bottle of some sort of acid. If you pick up the acid, then your movement speed is slower and you can't open doors. The only option is to go back to the door that you came from, but if you try that, you slip and fall, pouring the acid all over yourself, dying a slow and painful death. After restarting, if you try to go back into the room, things have changed. The lighting has a red tint. There are monsters that seem like mirrors, and there's a puddle of meat on the floor you can interact with. You would think you've stepped into the wrong room until you realize that the puddle of meat on the floor is you. But first, let's talk about the new creatures. These things are mirrors, floating mirrors that if touched hurt you. If you remember on the train, there was a note talking about how much the main character looked in mirrors, and these enemies are a manifestation of these mirrors that she looked at. Another interesting thing is that the mirrors reflect not the main character, but some kind of ugly creature that reinforces how low the self-esteem and self-image of the main character is. After killing the creature, you can interact with the block of meat, which is supposed to be yourself. At first, it will come up with the words gross and also disgusting, but if you keep interacting with it, it will start saying things like, I'm so gross, or I'm so disgusting. This shows that the most that she thinks of herself this way. After that, it's more horror-based and I have nothing to say. There's a train that tries to eat you, but I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. There's also a cool puzzle where you have to turn heads around to open a door, but after that, this is my favorite moment in the game. If you continue on, you find a new enemy, a parasite-looking thing. I'll talk more about that later, because if I did now, it would not make any sense. If you continue on, then we have more sad parts of the game, and also my favorite. You can enter a room with a save station, a door, and a note on a chair. The note is one of the sadder ones, and you realize why she is having these mental problems. It talks about her boyfriend left her because of how fat and ugly she is. And the worst part, she feels like she is responsible. Another thing is she refers to her child as Parasite. I think that another reason why the boyfriend left is because he has second thoughts about having a child. Also, the parasite creatures I was talking about, I think that it's a manifestation of her child. A child that she doesn't want. After, if you try to go into the save room, it seems off. The music isn't playing correctly, the orb is shaking, and the lighting is off. If you try interacting with the orb, instead of saying saved, it says saved erase. This fits with the two themes we just saw, abandonment and being tricked and betrayed. The abandonment fits with the boyfriend leaving her, and the being tricked part is that the boyfriend originally wanted to have a child, but now doesn't. If you go through the door, the save station, then you fight your first boss. It is another symbol for the main character's baby, from the way it moves to the way it looks. It moves like it's crawling, like an infant who hasn't learned how to walk yet. Even how it attacks, it seems like it's moving its head and arms in an uncoordinated fashion. But the thing is, you can't beat it. Even how it attacks, it seems like it's moving its head and arms in an uncoordinated fashion. But the thing that you can't beat it. It kills you. almost like the choice she made when having the child. It's too late to get an abortion. The child is coming. There is nothing you can do about it. When dying, you see a text screen similar to the one at the beginning, but this time, the main character is actually talking back. The therapist talks about how she is beautiful and doesn't see it, and how she will help her see it, see herself in a better light. The text ends, and you find yourself in a save station. Thankfully, it didn't delete your save file. If you try to go through the door with the boss, you're greeted with a puzzle. You have two options, beauty or self-growth. If you go through the beauty section, enemies start to spawn, saying that this is an unrealistic beauty choice and is unhealthy and not real. If going down the path of self-growth, you see that this image is distorted and ugly. If you go down the tunnel, you get ammo and items. Every time you go down the tunnel, the picture on the beauty tunnel gets more broken, showing that these standards are not feasible, and the picture of self-growth gets more realistic and not weird. If you keep going down the self-growth tunnel, then you enter another room. The room has an apple in the middle, a toilet, and a door. If eating the apple, the door gets shut. I think that this is the main character is doing. She's punishing herself for eating. But there's also a toilet, and if interacted with, then you throw up. This is bulimia, the act of eating a lot in a short amount of time then throwing up, removing half of the calories. If you enter the door that is not blocked, then there are monsters, similar to the beauty standards tunnel. But here's the thing, you can go through the blocked door. Like many things in this game, a lot of the things are in your mind. The gate is a mental barrier of eating. The main character has been trained to not eat or throw up, but when passing the mental barrier, you get rewarded with items. She's overcoming her problems with weight loss and self-image. But there's one more test. If you keep doing this enough, you'll find yourself in a different room. This room is like the other, except on the side there is a bathroom, and in the bathroom there is a changing table and a child on top of it. A very disgusting and bloody child. But a child. This is what the main character thinks of her child. She doesn't want it. It's the final step for getting over her problem. Now, this is a part completely optional, which confuses me. Wouldn't this be the final step? Taking your child and finally accepting the responsibility? Kinda weird. I'll just ignore it for now. So, I'm going to skip ahead to the final part of the game, as the rest is mostly horror-oriented, and I spent all my thinking on the first part of the game. But if I had to quickly go over it, there are the mines. There's a monster that looks like your dog, but at first, but then transform into something else. This fits the theme about betrayal, and it shows that even though she conquered her fears of appearing fat and ugly and everything else, she still isn't over the fact that her boyfriend left her. Then we have Nezumi testing. Nezumi is the Japanese word for rat or mice. It follows a story about a man unhappy about his job and life, so he summons a weird god thing from another dimension. We also have a new enemy. Again, I spent all my intelligence thinking on the first part of the game. Like I said, horror-oriented. You find your dog, but he is then flooded again, and you don't see him till the end of the game. Then we have Satras. It's like the weeping angel from Doctor Who. It likes to take your eyes. Cool thing I noticed, at the beginning of the game, you can find these secluded rooms where there is a note about how a creature was asking for a man's eyes. This maybe could be Satras, but who cares about that? Time for the end of the game. At the end of the game, you go against the Siren. The Siren, in my theory, is your father. The boss is split between 3 sections. In every section, there is a creature that doesn't try to kill you, but instead makes fun of you and insults you. Next to him is a note from a book, with each page giving on advice about how to kill the Siren. It's told in the way of a children's story. If you try to kill the creature, then the boss fight starts. For the first section, you need to kill it by electrocuting it. For the second, you don't kill it, but just run away after seeing it. And for the third time, you kill it by closing a gate on it and snapping its neck. If killed, a small creature comes out of its head and tries to kill you. It's in the form of a child crawling on the floor. We will get back to this at the end of the video. After that, another door appears and you can go through it. You either have the choice to leave your dog behind and leave everything, or you can get your dog, or you have the choice for the nightmare ending, which ends the game by summoning an elder god to end all humanity. If you try to get your dog back, then you will have to face more monsters and spooks. This is the final push and the hardest. It symbolizes how you're finally over with this horrible experience. If you choose to get your dog, you leave the sewers and leave everything behind. You got over your fears, and you became a stronger person after it. It's the end. Thank God it's the end. But you may be asking, what about the final boss? What's so important about it? There's a secret area in the game which shows you every enemy and their name, and the creature that insulted you is called your brain. The person telling you these horrible things is yourself. And one more thing, by killing your brain you spawn the boss. And from an interview with the developer, he says that the main character had childhood abuse. And after years of abuse, your brain is trained to think this way. And more proof that this is your father, the childlike monster thing that came out of the siren's head is called childhood memories. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. If you didn't, please leave a dislike. And if you want me to continue making videos like these, please leave it in the comments. And if you don't, say it out also. Also, I've left some resources I use in the video and the link to the game itself. Thank you. Thank you again for watching and have a nice day. And I also apologize for the amount of times I've stuttered. I'm not trying to waste your time, it's just I have trouble speaking into a mic. Again, have a nice day.